The word mummy would destroy everything Duke J. Vaughan had built to protect himself, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Hello, lovely. If tales of forbidden love and hearts brave enough to break their own vows draw you in, I'd be ever so grateful for a like or subscribe. It helps me share more stories of longing and history with you, and if you're willing, do tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I read every note, and each one brings such warmth to my heart. Now, let me ask you this. Could a duke break his sacred vow? Could a woman scarred by scandal dare to hope again? Could one feverish word from a child's lips shatter 3 years of carefully constructed walls? The autumn afternoon filtered through the tall windows of Thornwick Village School in pale amber light. Isabel Harvey stood before 15 students, her posture as straight as the pointer she held against the map of Europe. 28 years old, she wore a practical grey dress that matched the severe bun pinning back her dark brown hair. Every movement was precise, controlled, measured. "Who can identify the capital of France?" she asked, her voice warm enough to encourage, but distant enough to maintain proper boundaries. A small hand shot up. "Paris, Miss Harvey." "Correct, Thomas. Now copy the names of these capitals onto your slate tablets." She moved between the rows of wooden desks, observing their work with competent detachment. The scratch of slate pencils filled the schoolroom, a sound as familiar to her now as her own heartbeat. Miss Harvey, a girl of perhaps 10, looked up from her work, eyes bright with curiosity. "Do you have family in any of these places?" "My grandmother came from Scotland." The pointer trembled slightly in Isabel's hand. For just a moment, she was transported back 3 years, to whispers in the marketplace, to doors closing in her face, to her father's name spoken like a curse. Lord Edmund Harvey, magistrate of Yorkshire, exposed for accepting bribes. The scandal had spread through society like ink through water, staining everything it touched. "I have no family," Isabel said quietly, returning to the front of the classroom. "Now let us continue." She had learned her father's disgrace too late to prevent it. By the time the truth emerged, he was already in prison, already dying. Her mother had followed within months, shame proving more deadly than any fever. And Isabel? Isabel had been left to navigate a world that suddenly viewed her through the lens of her father's corruption. "Hope is a luxury I cannot afford," she thought, erasing the chalkboard with deliberate strokes. "Love leads only to devastation." The church bells chimed 4 o'clock. "Class dismissed. Please leave your slates on your desks." The children filed out in orderly fashion, their voices rising in excitement once they crossed the threshold. Isabel remained at her desk, organizing papers that were already perfectly organized, straightening books that sat in exact alignment. "You teach as if these children are mathematical equations, not souls." Isabel looked up to find Margaret Finch in the doorway, her blonde curls escaping from beneath her bonnet, her blue eyes filled with affectionate exasperation. The vicar's daughter was 26 and possessed a temperament as sunny as Isabel's had become clouded. "I teach them what they need to know," Isabel replied, continuing her unnecessary tidying. Margaret entered, gathering stray pieces of chalk. "You keep them at arm's length. You know their names but not their dreams. You correct their grammar but never ask what makes them laugh. Affection is dangerous." Isabel's hands stilled on a grammar primer. "I learned that lesson well, Margaret. You're 28 and you've already given up on living." The words struck like a physical blow, but Isabel's expression remained unchanged. "I survive. That is sufficient." "Is it?" Margaret reached into her reticule and produced a folded newspaper clipping. "Then explain why I've been carrying this for 3 days, debating whether to show you." Isabel took the paper, smoothing it against the desk. The advertisement was from the London Gazette, dated the previous week. "Governess sought for Lady Niamh Bennet, aged 9, at Vaughan Manor, Yorkshire. Must possess excellent credentials, emotional stability, and absolute discretion. Salary, £60 per annum plus room and board. Inquiries to Mr. Whitmore, estate manager. £60. Margaret's voice was soft. "That's double what you earn here." "It sounds like a mausoleum," Isabel murmured, noting the cold formality of the text. No mention of the Duke himself, no warmth, no indication of the child's personality or interests. Just requirements and compensation. "It sounds like an escape from village gossip and inadequate pay." "I don't need rescuing." "Don't you?" Margaret perched on the edge of a student's desk. "Mrs. Thornton still crosses the street when she sees you. The Ashworths wouldn't let you teach their daughter music. The baker shortchanges you every Tuesday. This village has a long memory, Isobel, and they've decided your father's sins are yours as well. Isobel's fingers traced the edge of the advertisement. Vaughan Manor. She knew the name. Of course, everyone in Yorkshire knew of the Duke of Thornbury, though he rarely appeared in society. A widower of 3 years, reclusive, rumoured to be as cold as the stone walls of his ancestral home. Perhaps that's exactly what I need, she thought. A place as emotionally barren as I've become. When did you stop believing you deserved more than mere existence? Margaret asked gently. The question hung in the air between them, unanswerable. Or rather, Isobel knew the answer too well. She'd stopped believing in 1844, when hope had proven itself a cruel illusion. I'll think about it, she said finally, folding the advertisement with careful precision. Margaret smiled, though sadness lingered in her eyes. That's all I ask. That evening, Isobel sat in her cottage, a cramped, cold space that had been all she could afford after her family's estate was seized. Her father's empty chair remained by the fireplace, a ghost she couldn't quite banish. Through the window, she could see the churchyard, where her mother lay buried beneath a simple stone. The advertisement sat on her table, lamplight flickering across its formal text. She read it again, then once more, memorizing words that offered nothing but duty and discretion. Emotional stability. They wanted someone who wouldn't feel too much, wouldn't disrupt the carefully maintained distance of a household in mourning. Absolute discretion. They wanted someone who understood the necessity of silence, of keeping painful truths locked away where they couldn't wound. Isobel looked at her reflection in the darkened window glass. 28 years old, already aged by grief and scandal, a woman who'd learned to armor herself in grey dresses and severe hairstyles, in emotional distance and practiced indifference. Perhaps a mausoleum is exactly where someone like me belongs, she whispered to the empty room. The lamp flame guttered, casting dancing shadows across the walls. Tomorrow, she would write to Mr. Whitmore. Tomorrow, she would take the first step toward a future that promised nothing but the safety of mutual emptiness. Hope was a luxury she could not afford, but survival? That she had mastered perfectly. 2 weeks later, Isobel stood at the edge of Thornwick village, with a single trunk at her feet, and Margaret's hands clasped tightly in her own. "Don't let his grief become your prison too," Margaret whispered, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Isobel managed a small smile. "I'm already familiar with prisons, Margaret. At least this one pays well." The hired carriage rattled through Yorkshire countryside, transformed by the shift from autumn to early winter. Bare trees reached skeletal fingers toward grey skies, and frost silvered the moorland grasses. With each mile, Thornwick village receded, taking with it the weight of whispers and sideways glances. Yet Isobel felt no lightness, only the exchange of one kind of isolation for another. Vaughan Manor emerged from the mist like something conjured from a Gothic tale. Grey stone absorbed the weak afternoon light rather than reflecting it, and multiple chimneys pierced a leaden sky. Towers rose at each corner, their windows dark and vacant. Black wreaths still hung on the doors despite 3 years having passed, and curtains remained half-drawn as if the house itself squinted against the world. The carriage stopped before the main entrance. A woman in severe black appeared immediately, Mrs. Collins, the housekeeper, 55, and carrying herself with the rigid efficiency of long service. "Welcome to Vaughan Manor, Miss Harvey," she said, her tone neither warm nor cold, merely factual. "His Grace is expecting you." Isobel followed her into a grand hall that might once have been impressive, but now felt merely vast and empty. Her eyes were drawn immediately to the portrait, dominating the space, a beautiful woman with dark hair and warm eyes, captured mid-laugh. Catherine Warren, the late Duchess. Even in paint, her vitality seemed to mock the tomb-like silence surrounding them. "The late Duchess," Mrs. Collins confirmed, following Isobel's gaze. "His Grace commissioned it the year they married." As they walked through the manor, Isobel noticed details that spoke of time suspended. Clocks throughout the house had stopped at 3:47, the hour of the Duchess's death, she assumed. Servants moved like ghosts, speaking in whispers and walking on tiptoe. Doors stood ajar to rooms clearly preserved exactly as their mistress had left them. "We exist in perpetual twilight here, miss," Mrs. Collins said quietly as they climbed the main staircase. "Have done for 3 years." The Duke's study was all leather and mahogany, with a fire crackling in the hearth that somehow gave no warmth. Duke J. Vaughan stood as Isabel entered, and she had her first true glimpse of the man who'd built this mausoleum around himself. 36 years old, he was tall but carried himself with exhausted weight, as if gravity pressed harder upon him than others. Dark hair silvered at the temples, and his eyes were the color of winter ice green, but cold enough to burn. His handshake was brief and assessing. "Miss Harvey," he gestured to a chair, "I trust your journey was acceptable." "Yes, Your Grace." "I'll be direct. I know about your father's disgrace." His gaze never wavered. "I require absolute discretion in this household. Can you provide that?" "Yes, Your Grace." Isabel met his eyes without flinching. She'd learned long ago that cowering only invited more cruelty. "Good. Now, the rules." He stood with his back to the fire, hands clasped behind him. "Neve needs education and structure, not affection. Her mother was irreplaceable. Do not attempt to fill that void. We maintain appropriate boundaries in this household. You are an employee. Remember that." Something flickered in Isabel's chest, not offense, but recognition. Here was another soul who decided that feeling nothing was safer than feeling everything. "I understand perfectly, Your Grace," she said calmly. "Those are exactly the boundaries I prefer." For just a moment, surprise crossed his features, quickly masked. He'd expected protest, perhaps, or reassurance that she could love his daughter. Instead, he'd found his own philosophy reflected back at him. A knock interrupted them. Mrs. Collins entered with a small figure beside her. Lady Neve Bennet was 9 years old, pale and thin, with dark curls that echoed her mother's portrait. But where Catherine's painted eyes sparkled with life, Neva's were haunted, ancient in a child's face. She executed a perfect curtsy and whispered, "How do you do, Miss Harvey?" Then she stood motionless, awaiting instruction, a marionette waiting for someone to pull her strings. No fidgeting, no curiosity, no childish energy, just careful, practiced stillness. Isabel recognized herself in that stillness. Both of them had learned to make themselves small, to take up as little space as possible in a world that found their existence inconvenient. "Would you like to show me your schoolroom, Lady Neum?" Isabel asked gently. The child's eyes widened slightly. If you wish it, Miss Harvey." They walked through echoing corridors, their footsteps too loud in the oppressive quiet. Neve paused before her mother's portrait, and for the first time, something flickered in her expression. "That's Mama," she said softly. "She died when I was 6. Papa says I mustn't disturb her memory." "Remembering someone isn't disturbing them, Lady Neum." The child gave her a quick, grateful glance before the walls came back up, the careful blankness reasserting itself. The schoolroom had a dusty, unused quality despite previous governesses. Books sat arranged but unopened, slates stacked in perfect order. Through the window, Isabel could see a conservatory locked and overgrown, glass panels clouded with neglect. "We study from 9 to 3 with an hour for lunch," Neum recited mechanically. "Mathematics, French, history, geography, and music on Thursdays. No enthusiasm, no personality, just rote recitation of a schedule imposed upon her." That evening, Isabel unpacked in her small quarters. Her window overlooked the ruined conservatory, and she found herself staring at it as darkness fell. 2 wounded souls, and 1 ghost of a child, that was Vaughan Manor's population. A knock announced Mrs. Collins with evening tea. The housekeeper lingered after setting down the tray. "Lady Neum has had 4 governesses in 3 years, miss," she said quietly. "None lasted more than 6 months. Why? His Grace dismisses them when they try to replace the late Duchess, or they leave because they can't bear the sadness." After Mrs. Collins departed, Isabel stood at her window, watching frost form on the glass. "I'm not here to replace anyone," she thought. "I'm here to survive, just like she is." The first month passed in mechanical precision. Mathematics at 9, French at 10, history after lunch. Neve performed each lesson competently but joylessly, her answers correct but lifeless. Isabel maintained perfect professional distance, praised sparingly, corrected gently. They were teacher and pupil, nothing more. The Duke communicated only through written notes delivered by Mrs. Collins. "Lady Neum requires additional practice in geography. Please adjust schedule accordingly. No family meals, no casual interactions." 3 people existed in separate bubbles within the same vast house, their orbits never touching. Yet Isabel observed what others perhaps missed or chose to ignore. Neve never played, never ran, never raised her voice above a whisper. She completed assignments perfectly but took no joy in learning, approaching education like penance. She flinched at sudden noises and apologized constantly for offenses that existed only in her mind. Through the walls at night, Isabel heard her crying soft, muffled sobs that never emerged into daylight conversation. Late November brought the first snow, and with it, a change. During their afternoon break, Niamh disappeared. Isabel searched the schoolroom, the library, Niamh's bedchamber, nothing. Then she noticed it, a door she'd assumed locked, standing slightly ajar, leading toward the manor's east wing. The conservatory sprawled before her like a magnificent corpse. Glass panes soared overhead, many shattered, allowing snow to drift through. What had once been carefully cultivated garden beds now rioted with dead vines and skeletal remains of exotic plants. 3 years of neglect had transformed beauty into desolation. Isabel found Niamh kneeling in the dirt between 2 overgrown beds, tears streaming silently down her face. "I'm sorry." The child scrambled to her feet, dirt streaking her dress. "I'm not supposed to be here." Papa locked it after Mama. Isabel knelt beside her in the cold earth, propriety abandoned. "You miss your mother?" The simple acknowledgement shattered Niamh's composure. Deep, wrenching sobs tore from her small frame, not the careful nighttime crying, but raw, devastating grief finally given voice. "Everyone says 3 years is long enough to grieve," Niamh gasped between sobs. "But I can't remember her voice anymore, Miss Harvey. I can't remember what her laugh sounded like. I'm forgetting her, and I don't know how to stop it." Isabel's carefully constructed walls crumbled. She recognized this grief, the desperate scramble to hold on to memories that slipped away like water through clenched fists. She'd felt it with her father, her mother, every person she'd loved and lost. She gathered Niamh close, the first physical affection she'd offered anyone in years. "Tell me about what she planted here." Niamh's voice steadied as memory transformed from pain to connection. The roses were her favorite. "This was lavender," she said. It helped her sleep. "And those were hollyhocks." She called them her sentinels, standing guard. Her small hand traced the air where flowers once bloomed. "She spent every afternoon here." She said, "Plants were honest. They showed you exactly what they needed. Do you think we could bring it back?" Niamh looked up with sudden hope. "Make it beautiful again?" Isabel hesitated, knowing she stood at a precipice. To agree was to promise something dangerous, to involve herself in this child's healing, to care. "I think beautiful things can grow again," she said carefully, "if we're brave enough to tend them." In his study, 2 floors above, Duke J. Vaughan stood frozen at the window. He'd come to review estate accounts when movement in the conservatory caught his eye. Now he couldn't look away. His daughter, his careful, quiet, broken daughter, was smiling. Actually smiling, leaning against her governess with trust he hadn't seen since Catherine's death. Something cracked open in his chest, painful but necessary, like ice breaking in spring thaw. "She's doing what I couldn't," he thought, fingers tightening on the window frame. "Should I stop this, or let her heal?" The door opened behind him. Mrs. Collins entered with tea, then paused, following his gaze. "She's good for Lady Niamh, Your Grace," the housekeeper said quietly. Catherine loved that conservatory. His voice came out rough, unused to speaking of his late wife aloud. "And she'd love seeing her daughter smile again, wouldn't she?" The words hung in the air long after Mrs. Collins departed. That evening, Jay summoned Isabel to his study. She entered with visible wariness, spine straight, preparing for dismissal. "I saw you in the conservatory with Niamh," he said without preamble. "I apologize, Your Grace. I know it was locked. You may restore it." He cut through her defense, the words escaping before he could reconsider. "With Niamh." Twice weekly during natural history lessons. Isabel stared at him, genuine surprise breaking through her composure. "Your Grace?" Jay forced himself to continue, each word feeling like removing shrapnel. Catherine would want it tended. She would want. He couldn't finish, couldn't voice what his wife would have wanted for their daughter. Their eyes met across the desk. 2 wounded souls recognizing each other in that moment, seeing the same careful armor, the same desperate survival, the same fear of hoping. Jay retreated first. "That will be all, Miss Harvey." The next morning, Isabel and Niamh stood in the conservatory wearing gardening gloves and carrying shears borrowed from the groundskeeper. Weak winter sunlight filtered through intact glass panels, illuminating their work. "Miss Harvey, look!" Niamh called out, her voice carrying genuine excitement for the first time. "This rosebush still has green wood underneath." She was filthy within an hour, dirt on her nose, leaves in her hair, dress hopelessly stained, and laughing. Actually laughing as she discovered life persisting beneath apparent death. "We'll need to prune carefully," Isabel instructed, demonstrating on a tangle of dead vine. "Remove what's dead, so what's alive can flourish." Niamh reached out spontaneously, taking Isabel's hand. Both froze, startled by the gesture, but neither pulled away. That evening, Isabel sat at her small writing desk, composing a letter to Margaret by candlelight. "I may have made a terrible mistake," she wrote. "The child is breaking through my walls, and watching her father watch her. I see pain so like my own that it terrifies me." She paused, looking through her window toward the Duke's study. Lights burned there still, his silhouette motionless against the glow. "We're all trapped in our grief," she continued, "but for the first time in 3 years, I wonder if there might be a way out." December arrived with purpose. For the first time in 3 years, the manor prepared for Christmas. Holly and ivy appeared on mantels, and the conservatory transformation continued, cleared beds, revealing soil still rich with promise, salvageable plants identified and carefully tended. Niamh bloomed alongside the garden. Animation returned to her movements, spontaneous laughter occasionally breaking the manor's perpetual hush. And Isabel, despite her fierce determination to remain detached, felt her carefully constructed walls crumbling with each shared smile. The Duke's presence increased gradually, almost imperceptibly at first. He began, checking on their progress, standing in the conservatory doorway, watching silently, then offering advice on pruning techniques, plant identification. Finally, one afternoon, he simply rolled up his sleeves and knelt beside them in the dirt. "Papa, you remember what Mama taught you?" Niamh's voice carried pure wonder. Jay's hand stilled on a rosebush, and something flickered across his features. Pain, yes, but also warmth. Some things you don't forget, even when you try. The evening Mrs. Collins set 3 places in the small family dining room felt like a revolution. "Miss Harvey, Papa, won't you both dine with me?" Niamh's invitation sparkled with hope. The meal began awkwardly formal silence, punctuated by clinking cutlery, 3 people unused to existing in the same space. Then Niamh began describing her Latin lesson with genuine enthusiasm, and somehow the ice began to crack. Isabel offered an observation about agricultural practices, drawn from memories of her father's estate in better days. Jay's gaze sharpened with interest. "You're remarkably well-informed for a schoolteacher, Miss Harvey." From there, conversation flowed: estate management, education theory, literature. Niamh watched with wonder as her father actually engaged, almost smiled, became something other than the frozen monument to grief she'd known for 3 years. Daily dinners became routine. Jay began lingering after Niamh retired, and their conversations extended into the evening, intellectual sparring about philosophy, politics, poetry. Both discovered they were evenly matched minds, and beneath the proper surface, attraction built like pressure behind a dam. One evening, their discussion turned dangerously personal. "You have definite opinions about crop rotation for a governess," Jay observed, refilling her wine glass. "My father's estate was agricultural before." Isabel stopped, shame rising like bile in her throat. "Before his fall." Jay's voice was quiet, not judgmental. "I've always known about your father, Miss Harvey." "Then you know I'm tainted. I know you carry shame that isn't yours to bear." He paused, his green eyes meeting hers with devastating honesty. "Rather like I carry grief that's becoming an excuse rather than a tribute." The charged silence stretched between them, recognition passing like current. Then Niamh's voice called from upstairs, and the moment shattered. That night, alone in her room, Isabel confronted the truth she'd been avoiding. "I'm falling in love with him, and I'm beginning to love Niamh as if she were mine." She wrote to Margaret, "Hope is the most dangerous thing. It makes you believe in impossible futures." Margaret's reply arrived the following week. "Perhaps impossible is just another word for difficult. Perhaps you deserve this." Christmas preparations consumed the manor. Niamh insisted on decorating every surface, her enthusiasm infectious. "This feels like Mama's Christmases used to feel," she said, hanging holly over the conservatory door. Her hand slipped naturally into Isabel's. "I'm so glad you came, Miss Harvey. You make everything less sad." Isabel's chest constricted. I'm in too deep. When this ends, it will destroy me. The village Christmas fair arrived on a crisp December afternoon. Jay insisted they all attend together, and as they walked through the village square, Isabel felt every stare, heard every whisper. The Duke and the disgraced magistrate's daughter. Jay seemed oblivious, focused entirely on Niam's enjoyment. When Isabel shivered in the cold, he placed his coat around her shoulders without a word, his hand lingering briefly. Mrs. Collins, walking behind them, wore an approving smile. The ribbon game, a village tradition where men competed for colored ribbons given by ladies, drew a crowd. Niamh begged her father to participate, and Jay, unable to refuse his daughter anything anymore, won easily. "Give it to Miss Harvey, Papa," Niamh called out, innocent and devastating. "She's like part of our family now." Jay approached Isabel, the blue ribbon in his hand, the entire village watching. "For helping restore what I thought was lost forever." Isabel accepted with trembling hands, their fingers brushing, his eyes holding hers a moment too long. Niamh fell asleep in the carriage between them on the journey home. Jay carried her upstairs, Isabel following through the quiet manor. They tucked her in together, domestic, natural, terrifyingly right. In the hallway after, Jay turned to her. "Thank you for today, for all of this. I've done nothing but teach her, Your Grace." He moved closer, and she could feel the heat of him in the cool corridor. "You've done everything. You've given me my daughter back. You've made this house feel like a home again." The air between them charged, heavy with possibility. His hand lifted, almost touching her face. "Your Grace, a message from London." Mrs. Collins appeared at the stairs, and the moment shattered. Isabel fled to her room, clutching the blue ribbon like a talisman. She lay awake in the darkness, the fabric soft against her palm. This cannot be. He's a duke. I'm scandal incarnate. Niamh deserves better than a stepmother who would ruin her prospects. But God help me, I love them both. The ribbon still held the warmth of his hand. Late December brought transformation. The conservatory showed signs of life beneath snow-green shoots pushing through frost, dormant bulbs stirring. Niamh had changed utterly, laughing freely, asking endless questions, showing affection without fear. The household staff whispered approvingly. "It's like the old days, before the Duchess died." Jay and Isabel's attraction became harder to hide, crackling in the air between them at dinner, in every accidental touch. New Year's Eve arrived with modest celebration. Niamh was allowed to stay up until 10, and in the drawing room, Jay taught her to waltz while Isabel watched from the settee, heart aching with dangerous hope. "Miss Harvey must dance too," Niamh insisted. Jay extended his hand. "Miss Harvey?" They maintained proper distance, but electricity arced between them with every turn. Niamh watched with innocent delight, seeing only her father's smile, not understanding the current threatening to pull both adults under. At midnight, after Niamh was sent to bed, they stood alone with champagne. "To new beginnings," Jay offered. "To forgetting the past," Isabel countered. His gaze intensified. Not forgetting, honoring it by continuing to live. They moved to the window overlooking the conservatory, moonlight silvering the glass. "Isabel." He spoke her given name for the first time, and she nearly shattered at the intimacy of it. His hand touched her face, and she froze between desire and terror. Then distant coughing from upstairs. "Niamh." They startled apart like guilty children. "Good night, Your Grace." Isabel fled. Jay remained alone, staring at his reflection. "What am I doing?" Catherine would. But he no longer knew what Catherine would want. Bitter cold settled over Yorkshire in January's first week. Niamh caught a chill after playing too long in the conservatory, initially minor, just tiredness and slight cough. Dr. Patterson prescribed warmth and fluids, nothing concerning. But over 3 days, the chill became fever. By the 4th day, Niamh burned with delirium. Dr. Patterson's expression grew grave. Influenza could go either way. Jay's terror paralyzed him. Mrs. Collins found him pacing the hallway, unable to enter the sick room. "The late Duchess died of fever, miss," she told Isabel quietly. "He's terrified it will happen again." Isabel refused to leave Niamh's bedside. 3 days and nights she maintained vigil, sponging fever, coaxing water, reading aloud, singing softly. Holding the child through delirium while Jay haunted the doorway, unable to enter but unable to leave, watching Isabel show tenderness he'd thought extinct in the world. The third night, the fever peaked. Niamh thrashed, crying out, "Mama, Mama, where are you?" Isabel gathered her close, rocking her like an infant. Then Niamh's fevered words changed. "Mummy, Mummy, don't leave me. I'm scared. Not Mama, Catherine, but Mummy, Isabel." Tears streamed down Isabel's face. "I'm here, darling. I'm right here. You're safe. Promise you won't leave like Mama did. Promise, Mummy." Isabel knew she was making an impossible vow, but her heart wouldn't allow anything else. I promise I'll stay." In the doorway, Jay heard everything. His daughter was calling another woman Mummy, and instead of pain, he felt overwhelming relief. She'd found someone to love, someone who loved her. His grief finally released. Catherine would have wanted this. He wept for the first time since the funeral. Dawn broke on the fourth day. Niamh's fever broke with it, and she fell into peaceful, healing sleep. Isabel slumped in her chair, exhausted. Jay finally entered, kneeling beside her. Isabel woke to find him there. "Your Grace, I'm sorry. I should have corrected her." "Don't." His voice was raw. "Please don't take that away from her, from either of you. It's not appropriate. I'm just the governess." Jay took her hand, thumb brushing across her knuckles. "You're the woman who brought my daughter back to life, who gave her a reason to fight, who loved her when I was too broken to show her how. Please don't say things you'll regret. The only thing I regret is the vow I made never to love again." His green eyes held hers with devastating honesty. "Because I've been breaking it for months. Every time you laugh at dinner, every time I watch you with Niamh, every time you exist in my house and make it feel alive again." "This is impossible." Isabel's voice broke. "The scandal, my father's name, your position, Niamh's future prospects. Society will crucify us both. Or she'll learn that love matters more than society's approval. I'm Lord Edmund Harvey's daughter. My very name is poison. Then we'll face the poison together." Jay cupped her face with both hands. "Do you think Catherine would want us frozen forever? Or would she want her daughter to have a mother's love again?" "I'm terrified." "So am I, but I'm more terrified of losing you." The kiss was gentle and certain, sealing a choice they were both making with open eyes. Both wept, both knew the cost, both chose it anyway. In the doorway, Mrs. Collins witnessed everything. She smiled quietly and withdrew, returning to the servants' hall with news. His Grace has finally chosen to live again. In the sick room, Jay and Isabel sat on either side of Niamh's bed, holding hands across her sleeping form. The word Mummy had shattered Jay's vow, and from those shattered pieces, a family was being born. Niamh recovered gradually, color returning to her cheeks, strength to her limbs. She remained unaware of the declaration between Jay and Isabel, but now called her governess Mummy with unconscious naturalness. Each time, Isabel felt joy and terror intertwine like vines. Jay watched them both with open affection now, no longer hiding behind propriety's walls. They navigated their changed dynamic carefully, no public declaration yet, but everything transformed. Hands touched in passing, meaningful glances lingered across dinner tables. Late evening conversations deepened into dangerous territory. Both knew they were walking toward a cliff edge. The warning came via letter from Jay's solicitor. Rumors were circulating in London. Village gossip intensified. Mrs. Collins reported delicately, "The staff is talking. Your Grace," some supportive, others scandalized. Jay dismissed it. Let them talk. But Isabel's anxiety grew with each whisper. Margaret arrived from the village with urgent warnings, requesting private conversation. "The whole county is talking," she said without preamble. "They're saying you've ensnared him, that you're using Niamh to trap a duke, that your father's corruption is being passed down." Isabel's shame and anger warred within her. "I never intended." "I know, but intention doesn't matter to society. You need to prepare for what's coming." At dinner that evening, Niamh, now fully recovered and openly affectionate, asked with devastating innocence, "When will you officially be my new mummy?" Isabel and Jay froze. "Papa looks at you the way he used to look at Mama in the old portraits," Niamh continued, oblivious to their tension. "So, you're going to marry him, aren't you?" Jay's voice gentled. "Darling, it's more complicated than that. Why? You love her. She loves you. She loves me. What else matters?" From the mouths of children, the simple truth, they'd been avoiding. That night, Jay summoned Isabel to his study. He pulled out a ring, not Catherine's, but a new one, emerald, set in gold. Neem is right. What else matters? He knelt before her. Isabel Harvey, will you marry me? Will you be Neem's mother and my wife? Every dream and every fear collided in Isabel's chest. The scandal will destroy you, your standing, your influence. I don't care. Neve will suffer. Doors will close to her. Then we'll find new doors. I want to say yes. God, I want to. But I'm so afraid. Jay took her hands. Fear is just proof we have something worth protecting. Yes. The word escaped on a sob. Yes, I'll marry you. Their kiss sealed the engagement. They agreed to keep it quiet until they could manage the social fallout. But secrets in manor houses never stay secret. Within 48 hours, rumours reached London. A letter arrived from the Dowager Duchess of Rothermere, Jay's aunt, Catherine's godmother, demanding explanation in scandalised, accusatory tones. You would dishonour Catherine's memory with a disgraced magistrate's daughter? Then came the anonymous letters, vicious missives calling Isabel fortune hunter, climber, worse. Your father's corruption was mere thievery. Yours is moral. Jay found Isabel in tears, one such letter trembling in her hands. This is what I warned you about, she whispered. He snatched the letter and burned it in the fireplace. Cowards who write anonymously deserve no consideration. But more arrived daily. Worse came during a village trip. Lady Ashford, a local aristocrat, publicly cut Isabel, turned her back when greeted, as if Isabel carried pestilence. Why was she rude to you, Mummy? Niamh asked, confused. Before Isabel could answer, they heard children's whispers. Her new mother is a criminal's daughter. Niamh returned home in tears. Why do they say mean things about you? That night, Isabel contemplated the unthinkable. She wrote a letter to Jay. I cannot let my shame destroy you and Niamh. Then she began packing her few belongings, planning to leave before dawn. Jay discovered her, unable to sleep, seeking her company. He stood in her doorway, taking in the half-packed trunk. You're leaving? I have to. For Niamh's sake. For yours. Don't I get a say in what's for my sake? His voice was quiet, dangerous. You don't understand what it's like to be the source of scandal. I do. It will poison everything beautiful we've built. Jay crossed the room, taking her hands, pulling her away from the trunk. Then we'll build something stronger than poison. I'm not letting you go. I lost Catherine. I nearly lost Niamh. I will not lose you, not to fear, not to society, not to your own shame over sins that were never yours. He cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. We fight this together, or we don't fight at all. I don't know how to be that brave. Then let me be brave enough for both of us, he said softly, until you remember how. The trunk remained half-packed, but Isabel stayed. 1 week later, the Dowager Duchess Amelia of Rothermere arrived unannounced, sweeping into Vaughan Manor like an aristocratic hurricane. Catherine's godmother, Jay's formidable aunt, 65 years old with an iron will that had bent kings. She confronted Jay in his study within the hour. You will not disgrace Catherine's memory with this sordid affair. The girl's father was a criminal, the Dowager continued, pacing before his desk. Her name is tainted. Her father's crimes are not hers, Jay countered. Society doesn't make that distinction. Then society is wrong. You're a duke. You don't have the luxury of defying society. Her voice sharpened. Think of Niamh, when she's presented at court, makes her debut, seeks a good marriage, every door will close because of this woman. The seeds of doubt took root. That night, watching Niamh sleep, Jay wondered, was he being selfish? Is love enough when it costs my daughter her future? He asked Mrs. Collins the next morning. Is a future without love worth having? She replied quietly. Isabel accidentally overheard the second argument from the hallway outside Jay's study. You're thinking with your heart, not your head, the Dowager declared. That child deserves a mother of appropriate station. Jay's voice wavered. I know, but Catherine would never have wanted this. Jay's silence felt like agreement. Isabel retreated, heartbroken. The social punishment intensified. Jay was pressured to attend a dinner party at a neighbouring estate, a show of normalcy. Governesses didn't attend aristocratic dinners. Isabel stayed home with Niamh. While they were gone, an anonymous note arrived. Keep the Duke's bed warm while you can. You'll be dismissed like the others. Neve found Isabel crying over it. "Mummy, what's wrong?" "Nothing, darling." But Neve was too perceptive. "Is it because of me? Because I call you Mummy?" "Oh, sweetheart, no. Never because of you." "Then why are people so mean?" Isabel struggled to explain class, scandal, society's cruelty to a 9-year-old heart. Neve's expression turned fierce. "When I'm grown up, I'll make it so no one can be mean to you ever again. I'll tell them you're the best mummy anyone could have." Jay's evening was torture. Every guest offered opinions on his situation. Lady Pemberton suggested he needed a proper wife. Lord Ashford reminded him the scandal affected everyone. Worse, eligible ladies were paraded before him, subtle replacements. He felt trapped, suffocated, doubting. He found Isabel in the conservatory at midnight, both too raw to sleep. "You should marry Lady Caroline Ashford," Isabel said without preamble. "She's beautiful, appropriate, everything I'm not." "I don't want Lady Caroline." "But you should, for Niam. Your aunt is right. My aunt is protecting Catherine's memory at the expense of our living happiness," Jay said, frustrated. "Maybe she should. Maybe Catherine's memory deserves protection." "Catherine is dead!" The words erupted, sharp and bald. He'd never said it so bluntly. Silence crashed between them. "She's dead," Jay repeated, broken now. "And I'm still here, and I want to live, and I want to love you. But everyone keeps telling me it's wrong. Then let me make it easy. I'll leave." "No. It's the only way to protect Niam from scandal. If I disappear, the gossip dies. You can find someone appropriate. Niam will be hurt, but she'll heal. She'll be destroyed. She's already lost one mother. Better a clean break now than years of social torture." "You're afraid?" "I'm practical." "You're running." Isabel's anger flared. "Yes, I'm running. Because this is exactly what happened to my mother. She loved above her station, and it destroyed her. I watched her die of shame. I won't do that to Niam." The Dowager Duchess found them mid-argument. "Good. Miss Harvey sees reason." She turned to Jay. "I've arranged for Lady Caroline to visit next week. You will court her properly, and Miss Harvey will be gone before then." "You have no right." "I have every right. I'm protecting this family's honor." She addressed Isabel. "You'll be compensated generously. A cottage in the Lake District. Pension, enough to live comfortably. You can disappear with dignity." "I don't want your money," Isabel said through clenched teeth. "Then take it, for the girl. Make this easier on her. Surely you care enough to minimize her pain." The manipulation worked. Isabel saw the logic: financial security, clean break, protecting Niam. She looked at Jay. "It's for the best. Don't do this. I'll leave at the end of the week." She walked away. Jay called after her, "Isabel." She didn't turn back. The next morning, Nia found Isabel packing. "Mummy, no. You promised." "I have to, sweetheart." Neve's composure shattered. She screamed, sobbed, clung desperately. "You said you'd stay. You promised. Everyone leaves. Everyone." Mrs. Collins had to pull her away. Niam's screams echoing through the manor. "Mummy, Mummy, don't go." In his study, Jay sat with his head in his hands, while the Dowager looked satisfied. "You'll thank me eventually. Get out." His voice was ice. "Jay, get out of my house, now." After she left, Jay remained alone. Through the window, the conservatory was visible, roses beginning to bud. Catherine's portrait watched from the wall. Upstairs, Neve's heartbroken sobs continued. In her room, Isabel sat, surrounded by packed bags, destroyed. The word "mummy" had built a family. Now it was tearing one apart. 3 days passed like a second funeral. Niamh refused to eat, speak, or leave her room. Isabel mechanically completed her final days of teaching, a ghost walking through familiar halls. Jay buried himself in his study, avoiding everyone. The staff walked on eggshells through the mourning manor. Mrs. Collins finally confronted him, entering his study without permission. "Your Grace, I've served this family for 30 years. Mrs. Collins, this isn't—" "I loved the late Duchess, but she would be ashamed of you right now." Her voice shook with rare emotion. "That child upstairs is wasting away. Again. Just like after her mother died, and Miss Harvey is dying inside. I see it in her eyes, and you're letting it happen because you're afraid of gossip." She left him with those words burning in the air. Late that night, unable to sleep, Jay found himself drawn to Catherine's portrait. He stood before it for the first time in months, really looking at her painted face. "What do I do, Bella?" he whispered, using the private name only he had called her. Memory flooded back her last words, when she'd known she was dying and called him to her bedside. "Promise me you'll let yourself love again. Promise me Neve will have a mother's love." He'd promised, then buried that promise in grief. "I've been so afraid of dishonoring your memory," he said to the portrait, "but I've been dishonoring your last wish." Clarity struck like lightning. Catherine would have loved Isabel, both educated, passionate about learning, fierce in their devotion. She would have wanted Neve happy. She would have hated what society's rules were doing to them. Jay touched the portrait gently. "Thank you for loving me, for giving me Nia, for teaching me how to be happy. Now I need to choose happiness again. I need your blessing to let you go." In his imagination, he heard Catherine's laugh, felt her approval warming him like summer sun. "Goodbye, my dear. Thank you for everything." At dawn, Jay took decisive action. He summoned his solicitor to draw up marriage contracts immediately. He wrote to every major family in the county with a stark message. "I am marrying Miss Isabel Harvey. Anyone who takes issue with this will no longer be welcome at Vaughan Manor or on my lands." It was social warfare, the nuclear option. Some relationships would end, but honest ones would remain. He found Isabel in the conservatory, tending the roses that were finally blooming, tears streaming silently down her face. "Don't go. We've been through this. It's decided." "I'm undeciding it. You can't just—" "I spoke to Catherine last night. Really spoke to her." He moved closer. Isabel turned. "What?" "Her last words were making me promise to let myself love again, to ensure Nia had a mother's love. I've been so focused on not betraying her memory that I've been betraying her actual wishes." Jay knelt in the dirt beside her. "I'm not asking you to marry a duke. I'm asking you to marry me, Jay Vaughan, a widower who's finally ready to live again. Yes, society will talk. Yes, some doors will close. Yes, Neve might face difficulties, but she'll have a mother who loves her, and that's worth more than all of society's approval." He pulled out the ring. "Catherine taught me that love is the only thing that matters. Then I forgot. You've helped me remember. Isabel Harvey, will you be my wife? Will you be Nieve's mother? Will you help me build a family based on love instead of duty?" All Isabel's walls crumbled. "What if I ruin everything? What if you make everything better? What if Neve suffers? What if she thrives because she's loved? What if society never accepts me? What if the people who matter do?" Isabel laughed through tears. "You're impossible. Is that a yes?" "Yes. God help us both. Yes." Together, they went to Neve's room. She lay curled in bed, facing the wall. "Neve, darling, we have something to tell you," Jay said gently. Silence. "I'm not leaving," Isabel added. Neve stirred. "I'm going to marry your mummy," Jay continued. "She's going to be your real, official mother. Forever." Neve turned. "Truly, truly." She launched herself at them both, and all three cried, laughed, held each other. "I love you, Papa. I love you, Mummy. We love you too, darling." Jay called the staff together. "Miss Harvey and I are to be married in 3 weeks. Anyone uncomfortable with this arrangement is free to seek employment elsewhere. But know that this is my final decision." Mrs. Collins beamed, leading the applause that slowly spread through the household. Letters went out to county families. Engagement announcements appeared in London papers. Responses came, some congratulations, many cold refusals. The Duke of Marlborough warned his social standing would suffer. The Earl of Devonshire offered support. The lines were drawn. "We're dividing your whole world," Isabel said anxiously. "We're discovering who our real friends are," Jay replied. That evening, the three of them sat in the conservatory. Roses bloomed in full glory, transformed from death to life. Neve played with her doll, singing softly. Jay and Isabel held hands, watching her. "Are you sure about this?" Isabel asked. "I've never been more sure of anything." "Your aunt will never forgive you." "Then I'll live without her forgiveness." He looked at the blooming roses. "These roses died. We brought them back. We can survive anything." "Look! A butterfly!" Neve called, pointing. All three watched the delicate creature dance among the blooms. Transformation made visible, new life emerging from what had seemed dead. From death and grief and fear, something beautiful was being born. 3 weeks later, the chapel at Vaughan Manor held a ceremony that defied every expectation of what a duke's wedding should be. No grand society event, no hundreds of guests in their finest jewels, just an intimate gathering of the village vicar, close friends, loyal staff, and a few brave aristocrats willing to stand with them. The Dowager Duchess's absence spoke volumes, as did that of most of London society. But the people who mattered were there. In her room, Margaret helped Isobel into a simple but elegant cream silk gown. Mrs. Collins appeared with Catherine's lace veil, tears in her eyes. "The late Duchess would want you to wear it, miss." She believed in love. Isobel's hands trembled as she touched the delicate lace. "I'm about to become a duchess. Me, Edmund Harvey's disgraced daughter. You're about to become Jay Vaughan's beloved wife and Neve's cherished mother," Margaret corrected gently. "That's all that matters." Neve burst through the door, eyes wide. "Mummy, you look like a princess." Joy flooded through Isobel's fear, pure and undeniable. Walking down the aisle, Isobel had no father to give her away. Instead, Neve and Margaret flanked her, the daughter she was gaining, and the friend who'd never abandoned her. At the altar, Jay's eyes held only her, as if the rest of the world had ceased to exist. The vicar spoke of love triumphing over adversity. Then came the vows, exchanged with trembling voices. "I vow to honor you, protect you, and love you," Jay said. "I vow that no societal judgment will diminish what I feel. I vow to be worthy of the second chance you've given me." "I vow to love you and Neve with all I am," Isobel replied. "I vow to be brave enough to accept this gift of family. I vow never to let shame or fear make me run again." Their kiss was tender and certain, sealing everything. The reception gathered in the great hall, Catherine's portrait still watching from the wall. "She's part of our family story," Isobel had insisted. "She should witness our beginning." Mrs. Collins raised her glass. "To the family that built itself from broken pieces," Margaret followed. "To the woman who stopped running and started living." The Earl of Devonshire, one of Jay's few true friends who remained, offered, "To love that's brave enough to defy the world." Neem stood on a chair, her toast adorable and profound. "To my mummy and papa, and to flowers that grow even after winter." That afternoon, a pile of returned invitations arrived, events they were no longer welcome at. Doors officially closed. Isobel saw them, fear rising in her chest. "It's begun." Jay gathered them all and burned them in the fireplace. "Let it burn. We don't need their approval." But Isobel noticed his jaw tighten. It cost him, even if he denied it. She fled to the conservatory, needing air. Nia found her there. "Mummy, why are you sad on your wedding day?" "Some people are angry at Papa for marrying me." Nia tilted her head, considering. "But you make us happy. Isn't that more important than what people think? When did you get so wise?" "You and Papa taught me. You chose love even though it was scary." Neve hugged her fiercely. "So, I'm choosing love too. And I choose you as my mummy, no matter what anyone says." Isobel's tears came freely. "I choose you too, darling. Always." That evening, the Dowager Duchess arrived uninvited, confronting them at dinner. "You've made your bed, now lie in it." She turned her venom on Isobel. "I hope you're satisfied. You've ruined him." Jay stood. "Aunt Amelia, you are no longer welcome in my home. You'll regret this, when Niam is denied her rightful place." "I have my rightful place," Niam interrupted with unexpected courage. "With my mummy and papa who love me." The Dowager stared, stunned by the child's defiance. "Goodbye, Aunt Amelia," Jay said with finality. Her departure burned the final bridge. After Nive was put to bed, Jay and Isobel returned to the conservatory, their place. Moonlight silvered the blooming roses. "Are you sorry?" Isobel asked. "Be honest." "Sorry I lost people who care more about status than character?" "No." He pulled her close. "Sorry I chose you and Niam over society's approval?" "Never. Ask me in 10 years. 20. I'll say the same. I'm still afraid sometimes." "Good. It means this matters. Fear is just proof we have something worth protecting." By lamplight, they read letters received. The Earl of Devonshire promised support. Lady Margaret Rothford praised their courage. Margaret wrote of her pride, but there were also anonymous hate letters, vicious in their cruelty. Isobel started to read one. Jay took it from her hands and burned it unread. "Their poison has no place here." Standing together among the roses, Jay took her hands. I broke my vow to never love again, and I'm glad. I broke my vow to never hope, and I'm terrified and grateful. So, let's make a new vow. Together. His green eyes held hers. I vow that love will always matter more than approval. I vow that our family will be built on honesty and affection, not duty and appearance. We vow to be brave enough to live fully, love openly, and face whatever comes together. Their kiss sealed the new vows. From upstairs came Niamh's voice. Mummy? Papa? They went to her together. She'd had a dream. I dreamed Mama was there. She said she's happy, we're happy. Children's dreams, innocent but profound. They tucked her in together. Will you always be here when I wake up? Niamh asked. Always, Isabel promised. We promise, Jay added. Good. I love you. We love you too. Dawn broke over Vaughan Manor. Isabel woke as a duchess for the first time, Jay beside her, actually smiling in sleep. Through the window, the conservatory bloomed with arriving spring. The manor was transforming from mausoleum to home staff, bustling with purpose, Niamh's laughter echoing as she played with Mrs. Collins. My father's disgrace will always be part of my story, Isabel thought. Society will always judge me. Doors will remain closed. But I have a husband who chose me over comfort, a daughter who calls me mummy with joy, not obligation, a home built on love, not duty. My mother was wrong. Love isn't always destructive. Sometimes it's the only thing strong enough to build from ruins. Dear lovely, if you've followed Jay and Isabel this far, you know their story isn't about a perfect ending. Society didn't suddenly accept them. Some relationships never healed. But they built something better than approval. They built a family. From a duke frozen in grief, a woman trapped by shame, and a child aching for love, they created home. One word, mummy, broke every vow Jay had made to stay safe. And from those broken vows, something beautiful grew. If their courage moved you, press like. If you believe love is worth fighting for, subscribe. And tell me in the comments, would you have been brave enough to choose love over safety? Until next time, remember, the greatest love stories aren't about perfect people. They're about brave ones. In the conservatory, 3 figures stand surrounded by blooming roses. Niamh holds both their hands, looking out at spring arriving. Love is not about perfect timing. It's about brave choices.